When you come up with a morning routine, understand that you're undertaking it in order to do something good for yourself, not to meet some stranger's standard of productivity. If you get your morning routines down, your days just tend to flow the way that you want them to a lot easier. However, getting your morning routine down is simply not as aesthetic, it's not as easy as that girl TikToks make it look. I used to really struggle with morning routines. I actually hated the concept of them because they were so glorified on the internet. They were almost romanticized. In videos, they always looked a little too pretty to be realistic or relatable. But more recently, I've set myself on the path of creating a morning routine that feels good, that's catered to me, that's catered to my wants and my needs, and that is sustainable. In this video, I want to talk about some steps that you can take to build a morning routine like that for yourself. These are the ideas that made morning routines click for me. Answer the question, literally, why do you want a morning routine? So at the start of this year, I decided that I was going to try the Miracle Morning Routine. If you haven't heard of it, it's a 5-step morning routine that is supposed to change your life. Create miracles, if you will. So you do all of these steps on the screen every single morning, and I mainly wanted to do this for content purposes. So I wanted to create a video titled, I tried 30 days of the Miracle Morning Routine, sort of Wheezy Waiter, old school Machiavella style. So I went for it and I did things by the book. I designed my environment so that everything was super easy to start and complete. I had a simple version of each habit for hard days. I tried to make things as enjoyable as I could, but in spite of all of that, I started dreading this routine. And if you've ever tried to implement a kind of elaborate routine into your life, you probably know the feeling of like, ugh, I don't want to do this, don't make me, but you're talking to yourself. Going back to the quote at the start of this video, when you come up with a morning routine, understand that you are undertaking it in order to do something good for yourself, not to meet a stranger's level of productivity. When it comes to designing your morning routines, you usually pick a bunch of stuff like in the Miracle Morning, that on a logical level, there is a lot of value in doing. But by picking a bunch of random activities, you're almost making sure that you're not going to follow through. The thing is that I feel like no one mentions is that your morning routine can feel however you want it to feel. It can feel luxe and self-indulgent. It can be filled with candles, coffee, and cozy books. It can feel focused and productive. You can fill it with planners, highlighting, to-dos. But before you go off and you decide on a morning routine, you need to decide how you want it to feel. Otherwise, it's not going to work. When I went ahead and I picked up the Miracle Morning book, the only reason that I wanted to pick those particular activities was because I wanted to make a video out of it, which at the end of the day isn't enough to keep you going. To design a routine that you want to do, ask these questions. What do I struggle with? How do I want to feel in my days? What are my values? Then ask, what morning habits would make me feel that way? What morning habits would address my struggles? What morning habits would embrace my values? Instead of cobbling together this morning routine where you create a green smoothie, you write a gratitude list because that's what you saw someone on TikTok doing, design your morning routine intentionally. When you're adding activities into your morning routine, you want to be asking yourself the question, why do I want to do this? And if you don't have an immediate answer that you can feel in your body, throw it out the window. And there is a difference between an immediate answer and a post-answer justification. So for example, I could pretty easily justify including a green smoothie in a morning routine. Obviously, good thing, definitely not bad for you, gives you energy. But my body response to a green smoothie in my morning routine is a no. I don't see the value in it enough to include it in my morning routine. A lot of people mistake a justification with a why. A why that you tack on after choosing something isn't a real why. A why needs to be something that you can feel. I talk a lot more about whys. I go in depth on them in my video on 7 habit tips that I wish I had learned years ago. I'm gonna have that video down below. I talk all about creating whys, making your whys more powerful. And if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't understand, how can I get a full body why? Then go watch that video. Create a command center. My morning routine right now is pretty simple. There are a few little affirmations, meditation, some time to read it, and of course filling out my planner. But what makes it easier is having a morning routine command center in my Notion. In this command center, I have my list of affirmations. I have my morning routine checklist, work startup routine. I have links to whatever I may need. My calendar is embedded and so is my content calendar because I have a terrible memory and I need to be reminded over and over again if I have deadlines coming up. And to get to this command center, I just open my iPad, I click on the morning routine shortcut and it opens up. In this context, a command center is just a central place where you can find and access everything that you need to complete your morning routine. It's another way of designing your environment so that you can make your routines easier, and you can create it in Google Keep, Apple Notes, Things, Evernote, literally whatever note platform you use. There are so many now. Just create a space that makes it easier for you to access everything that you need to do your morning routine. Before I move forward, this video is sponsored by Squarespace, which is the platform that I recommend to literally anyone who wants to create a website, because I know that it's the easiest platform to use and you can create beautiful websites with it. One of my favorite things about Squarespace is that it is an all-in-one platform. No plugins, no patches, no updates ever. Having had a high maintenance website, I can assure you that we love a low maintenance website. You can create any kind of website on Squarespace no matter what profession you are in, or if you're just creating a website for fun. If you're an artist, you have a business, you're doing e-commerce, you want a membership website, you can do it with Squarespace. I use Squarespace for both of my websites. So I have the intentionapp.com. It looks like this. I created it with Squarespace. I created that in literally an afternoon because it's so easy to do. And I have my main website, muchelleb.com.au, also created in Squarespace. It's a little bit more fancy. It took a little bit longer, but if you're a no-fuss person like me, everything really is drag and drop, very easy to do in Squarespace. I created pages like this and this and this, all using Squarespace. Click the link below, squarespace.com/muchelleb. Use the code muchelleb to get 10% off of your first purchase. Once again, it's squarespace.com/muchelleb. Use the code muchelleb to get 10% off of your first purchase. Stick to the 80% rule. When it comes to consistency with habits and routines, there are a few rules that a few people swear by. These are rules that I have tried that haven't always worked for me. Firstly, never skip a habit twice. If you skip a habit twice, you are toast. Secondly, don't break the chain. You know the one. The calendar, the X's, Jerry Seinfeld. And I actually think that these rules really work for some people in some circumstances. If you were focusing on an entire year of running and running was the only habit that you were wanting to develop, that was it, I would say use those rules. But if you have a morning routine, you have a shutdown routine, you have domestic responsibilities you need to keep up with every week if you're someone who has children, meal prepping routine, just an assortment of things that you are trying to keep up with in life that if you don't do lead you to being behind, I wouldn't use those rules. Of course, everyone is different, but I have found with consistency that the more rigid my outlook is, the more pressure I put on myself to do a whole bunch of activities consistently every single day, never miss, the more I will struggle to keep up. The more rigid I am, the less self-compassion I have, the less self-compassion I have, the less I keep up with my routines and habits. So my rule is aim for 70 to 80%. If you are low energy for whatever reason, if you have a disability, if you struggle with mental health issues, if you have ADHD, if you're a mom who has little help, you have children, or there is some other reason in your life why sticking to habits and routines is more difficult for you, go ahead and lower that number if you feel the need to. I realize that I am supposed to preach discipline, I am supposed to preach consistency, and consistency is good. Self-discipline, we know I don't like. I call it self-management. I support self-management, but to be consistent in every single area of your life, every single day, every single week, every single month is a very difficult thing to do. And I'm a big believer in sometimes is always better than never. I would much rather be a person that works out sometimes than that hasn't worked out in 3 years. I would way rather be the person who picks up a book every other day than the person who can't remember the last time they read a book. And it's not to say that you can't be totally consistent in some areas. There will usually be some areas that you can be quite consistent in depending on what category you fall in, but it's okay if you're not 100% consistent in every single area of your life. Give yourself grace, apply the 70 to 80% rule or lower depending on your needs. Reflect big, not small, then course correct. Regular feedback when you are trying to do something new, like a morning routine, is good. We love regular feedback, that's what keeps us improving. But if you start day by day judging yourself based on whether you did your morning routine or not, it is not useful feedback. You skip one day of your morning routine and you think, I am a failure. You do the most one day and you read 20 extra pages and you meditate for the extra long meditation. And the feedback you give yourself is, I am incredible. Neither of those pieces of feedback are necessarily true and you shouldn't believe them. If your big goal with your morning routine is consistency, instead of reflecting small on a day-to-day basis, reflect big on a weekly or monthly basis. At the end of the week, the end of the month, do a tally of how many times you stuck to your morning routine. Then you can course correct. Ask yourself, what do I need to change to be more consistent if you find that you aren't sticking to your morning routine as much as you want to. If you find that you aren't keeping up with things, I find that the answer is very rarely to try harder or to do better. It's usually to do something differently. If you aren't keeping up with your morning routine, if you find yourself dreading your morning routine, if you find that your morning routine is overwhelming you are probably doing something that isn't aligned with how you work. Or there could be something in the circumstances around you in your life that is making things more difficult that you need to change. Before ever telling yourself that you need to try harder with a habit or a routine, ask yourself, what can I do differently? Have a simple routine, have a complex routine. If you follow me on Instagram, which you absolutely should, you would have seen that the other day I woke up late. So instead of a full meditation, I did a box breath. Instead of reading for 20 minutes, I read a page. Instead of baking a fancy tofu scramble, I made peanut butter on toast. I didn't really fret about waking up late, I just focused on how I could move forward. I have always been someone who in the past has been really thrown off when my wake up is mucked up. My morning routine would just go out the window, I'd feel kind of rushed, I'd feel like I couldn't do those things that I wanted to do in my morning routine because I didn't have time, I needed to just get to it. And then I start to feel like my whole day was going to go poorly because my morning went poorly because that's all of the messaging that you see out there. You need to set yourself up right in the morning, and if you don't, everything goes bad from there. But now that I think of my morning routine as flexible, that doesn't happen. Days when you do not get your morning routine done do not mean that you are inconsistent or you are undisciplined. They really say very little about you. Days when you don't do your morning routine usually just mean that you woke up with low energy, low time, or low engagement, or just bad circumstances, all things that are totally unrelated to you and your character. You will have days where you wake up and you feel like a living piece of trash because your cat woke you up 7 times. You will have days where you wake up and the feeling of anxiety is heavy because you have so much on for your day. You will have days where you wake up mid-dream, which should be illegal because that's the worst feeling in the world, and you feel the need to go back to bed for a little while. Instead of pretending like those days are never going to happen, you need to plan for those days. Some easy swaps that you can do are, instead of doing your full fancy skincare and makeup routine, chuck on moisturizer and a tinted sunscreen. Instead of reading 10 pages, read 1 paragraph. Instead of doing a detailed plan for your day, get a post-it note, write out 3 to-dos, that's it. When I have a simple routine, my rate of consistency through the bloody roof. It's so low pressure, and that's how it should be. The simple routine should be so low pressure that it's like, yeah, I'll do that. Sarah, who runs the blog Yes and Yes, describes these simple versions of your habits as bookmark habits. And that's truly what it feels like. It's like a little bookmark, like, okay, I can't get to the full thing today, but I'll do the mini thing today, and it keeps you going. Because when you don't do that simple routine, if instead you just skip the days, when things are too hard, there's too much time pressure, you have low energy, you are so much more likely to drop off and stop doing your routines entirely. If you liked this video, you're trying to implement a morning routine or just any other habit in your life, the video that you should really watch is 7 habit tips that I wish I learned years ago. I love that video. I think that video is full of so much valuable information. I'm gonna have that linked on the screen as well as down below. I appreciate you so very much, and I will see you soon.